Eddie Hearn has left the door open for an Anthony Joshua-Luis Ortiz fight after June 1st. If Ortiz isn't the guy that AJ fights on June 1st, he's happy for AJ to fight Ortiz after that, assuming the Deontay Wilder fight can't be made. And at the moment, it looks as though Wilder has no interest in the undisputed fight right now. So if that's the case, and if Ortiz isn't tied up with a Wilder fight himself, then Hearn says, look, if Ortiz wants that smoke after AJ's past June 1st and he's still got his belts, we can do it. He says that AJ would knock Luis Ortiz out in 3 rounds, no problem. Now that might be a comment which comes back to haunt him. I wouldn't be so quick to say that AJ destroys Luis Ortiz in 3 rounds. Okay, Ortiz is technically good. He can punch. He's got decent hand speed. He knows his way around the ring. He's been in there with big punches, we know, Deontay Wilder, etc. And Wilder did get to him, obviously, eventually, but it took a few rounds and Ortiz had plenty of success along the way. So, yeah, it was an off-the-cuff remark, and it was a remark made, I think, kind of out of frustration by Eddie Hearn. He was in a media scrum in the United States a couple days ago, and that's when he made the remark, because people in the United States, particularly the media and a lot of the Wilder fans, they believe this fairy tale, this myth, they have this delusion that AJ is somehow afraid of people like Ortiz and Wilder, which is just laughable. And all of the evidence, which is piling up now, shows the exact opposite. So I think Eddie Hearn came out with a remark like that out of frustration. But hey, if Joshua fights Ortiz and it ends up being a war, and maybe AJ gets dropped and has to come back from adversity and win, or maybe even loses, then they're going to be playing that little clip of Eddie Hearn saying, Joshua beats Ortiz in 3, easy. They're going to be playing that over and over again. That's going to be doing the rounds on social media for a good few months. So be careful saying stuff like that, Eddie Hearn, because Luis Ortiz is no joke. Yeah, he is a good fighter. He's a dangerous fighter. I've said this before. I'll say it again. Ortiz is on paper, he's no better than anybody else Anthony Joshua's fought. In fact, somebody like Povetkin, Klitschko, etc., these guys are better than Luis Ortiz on paper. Far better. And they're certainly no older than Ortiz either. Vladimir Klitschko, he'd been out the ring for a while, but he was in training camp the whole time, right? Because he had those 2 cancelled rematches with Tyson Fury. So he was in training camp the whole time before he fought Anthony Joshua. Well, certainly for a long time. He had several training camps between the Tyson Fury first fight and facing Anthony Joshua. There's several training camps in between. So he was in shape. Look, I'm not saying he was in his prime, but if you're comparing him to Ortiz, you're trying to tell me that Klitschko wasn't still as viable as a Luis Ortiz? Of course he was. Klitschko was an Olympian. Klitschko was a world champion for how many years? When's Ortiz been a world champion? When did Ortiz win Olympic gold? Ortiz doesn't have the pedigree, amateur or pro, that Klitschko has. Facts. Ortiz doesn't have the pedigree, amateur or pro, that Alexander Povetkin has. Facts. Povetkin was Olympic gold medalist. Povetkin was one of the world's top amateurs for many years. Povetkin was a former world champion as a professional. Povetkin's beat better guys than Luis Ortiz has beat. What on earth makes you think that Alexander Povetkin is any less dangerous as an opponent than Luis Ortiz? Where did you get that crazy notion from? So AJ's been fighting guys as dangerous or probably more dangerous than Luis Ortiz. So where this fantasy has come from that, Ortiz is the boogeyman and AJ's scared, it's just nonsense. It's nonsense. But be that as it may, he is a good fighter. He is dangerous. He is a southpaw, and there are not many heavyweight southpaws around in the pros. And so to come out and make these flippant remarks like AJ is just going to blast him out in 3, I think it's a little short-sighted, a little reactionary by Hearn, and something he may live to regret. I would give Luis Ortiz a lot more respect than that. I'm not saying AJ can't knock him out in 3. This is heavyweight boxing. If you land the shot at the right time, the other guy's probably going to go. But I would be surprised if AJ got him out of there in 3. Let's just put it that way. I would think the fight is going to go, at least 5, 6, 7 rounds. Again, heavyweight boxing, it could end earlier, but if we're looking at probabilities, I reckon it would go at least to the midway stage, and I think it will be competitive. I don't think AJ is just going to go out there and smash Luis Ortiz to pieces. I think it'll be competitive. Ultimately, I do suspect that AJ would win, but I wouldn't be shocked at an upset either. So you got to have respect for these guys, for these heavyweights. But, I can see why Hearn's maybe a little frustrated with the attitude of a lot of the American media guys, with the YouTube channels and whatnot. But he has left the door open. That's another thing which people are going to bring to Eddie Hearn after June 1. Whoever AJ fights, if it's not Luis Ortiz and AJ gets past whatever opponent it is and he looks good, does well, then they're going to say, well, look at what you said before June 1st. You said Ortiz is still a viable opponent for AJ. So let's see if we can reopen the negotiations. Again, that's assuming Ortiz isn't being reserved as an opponent for Deontay Wilder, as an in-house PBC opponent. If that's not the case, then maybe we'll get to see Joshua versus Ortiz. And this is what Joshua's got to do. If Wilder won't fight him, if Fury won't fight him, the best he can then do is take on the best opponents who Fury and Wilder have fought and try and do a better job on those opponents than Fury and Wilder did. That's all he can do. And more so concentrate on Wilder, Wilder's opponents, because obviously the priority for AJ is to get Wilder's WBC belt. And he may need to put pressure on Deontay Wilder in terms of the public perception. And the best way to do that is to take on former Deontay Wilder opponents and do a better job. Take on opponents like Ortiz if possible. People who, the Wilder fanboys have been claiming AJ will be afraid to fight, and people who the Wilder fanboys have been claiming AJ wouldn't beat. So that's the way you put pressure on Wilder and his team. That's not just putting the pressure on Wilder, it's putting the pressure on his team. The Al Haymans, the Shelly Finkles, etc. Anyway, let me know how you guys feel in the comment section below. It's happening, I'm out. Join me on Patreon. I upload a minimum of 2 podcasts every single week, covering a wide variety of controversial topics, as well as live stream Q&A sessions. Take a look on screen right now at some of the podcasts I've produced so far. For just $3 a month, the equivalent of about £2 a month, you get access to all my new podcasts and my entire back catalogue of past podcasts, including my popular Confessions of a Nightclub Bouncer series. You can listen on your computer or on your smartphone or tablet by downloading the Patreon app from the Google Play Store or the App Store for free. The Patreon app also allows you to download each podcast in MP3. For less than the price of a cup of coffee, you get access to dozens of hours of exclusive content. It's easy to sign up, there's no contract, and you can cancel at any time. So come and join our community of free and critical thinkers by signing up with me here on Patreon today.